I like speedrunning. Watching it, that is, not so much doing it. The closest I've come to speedrunning myself was way back in the days of the Master System when for some reason I became addicted to Alien 3 and would play through it in its entirety at least a couple of times a day. And then there was the Chaos Engine on the Mega Drive a couple of years later where I would do basically the same thing. Even then I wasn't really speedrunning, I wasn't timing myself or actively looking for the quickest way through the games. I was just playing through them repeatedly and naturally getting better and better at it with practice. But I do enjoy watching speedrunning, especially when it involves a game I'm very familiar with, like Doom or Bloodborne or most recently Elden Ring. In fact, once I'd finished Elden Ring, I made a bet with myself as to how fast the world record speedrun would be after a month. I guessed 2 hours, which seemed impossibly optimistic given it had taken me over 60 hours to beat the game, but I knew how insane those speedrunners are. Well, at the time of writing, the world record stands at a little under 18 minutes, and I absolutely guarantee it will be less than that by the time I get off my fat ass and actually finish this video. Anyway, what I often enjoy even more than actual speedruns are the excellent commentaries and video analyses made by people like Carl Jobst and Summoning Salt. The world of speedrunning makes for excellent drama with emotional highs and devastating lows, and the technical side of things can be fascinating as well. Turns out so many games can be twisted or downright broken in ways I never could have imagined. Speedrunning takes incredible skill and a level of patience and determination that would make a Buddhist monk look like a child with attention deficit disorder. And that's pretty much why I've never felt like giving it a go myself. I'm no child, but my attention deficit disorder is real. And as for skill, I had precious little when I was grinding out Alien 3 runs 30 years ago, and I have even less now. But recently I've been thinking that it may be worth trying out, just on a casual basis as a sort of experiment. There's not really any reason I shouldn't enjoy it, as long as I can accept I'm not going to be threatening any world records. After all, when it comes to racing games, my favourite thing to do is just drive lap after lap of any given circuit, trying to find the right lines and the proper braking points, and is speedrunning really any different? So what the hell, time to give it a go. I did think for a while about which game I should devote myself to, but really the choice was obvious. I just love Doom. I've watched plenty of speedruns of it, and it seems like it lends itself very well to the speedrun ethos. It's quick, it's simple, there's not too much RNG. There are many well-established ways to speedrun it, some of them more noob-friendly than others. On the downside, of course, as one of the most popular speedrunning games on the planet, and one that has existed for many, many years, there's a hell of a lot of competition, which makes it tough to climb the leaderboards. But I knew right from the outset that even thinking about such things was only going to be psychologically damaging. I had to be doing this purely for my own satisfaction, and not care about what anyone else had done. Turns out that's easier said than done. For now though, the next decision is which version of Doom should I use. I mainly use GZ Doom, which allows all sorts of fancy customizations and different options, but Doom speedrunning seems to be the realm of purists, who stick as close as possible to what Doom was like when it first launched 30 years ago. Which is fine, but there are all sorts of tools for getting DOS Doom running properly on modern machines that I don't really understand. So I figure I'll go with the recent Unity ports of the original Doom games. These need no tinkering to get working properly, and as an added bonus, the number of people speedrunning them is significantly lower, meaning I have a better chance of getting a decent ranking. Not that I care about such things, I'm still telling myself. Okay, that's all well and good, but now which category am I going to try out? There are plenty of them, for basically any way you can play Doom there's a speedrunning category. The most popular is probably UV Speed, which means just getting through the game on the ultra-violence difficulty as quickly as possible. Then there's pacifist runs, where you're not allowed to harm monsters, and Tyson runs, where you're only allowed to use your fists. Those two deviate a bit too far from the fundamentals of Doom for me, and I reason that UV speedruns are probably so optimised that I'll never be able to compete. Not that I care about such things, I'm still telling myself. So I decide on UV Max, which entails killing everything and finding every secret while playing on the hardest difficulty. That seems like the way Doom should be played, it seems respectful somehow. But I'm not going to be doing that for a whole game, oh god no. The odds of me making it through a whole Doom game on ultra-violence without dying a billion times are minimal at best. And trying to do it in a speedrun setting would just be an invitation for the god of frustration to manifest itself in my cerebral cortex, where it would reside for all eternity, wreaking havoc on the world, making everyone's shoelaces come untied at inconvenient moments, and hiding your car keys behind the fridge. No, I'll just be doing an individual level run where I pick a level, kill everything in it and find every secret on the way to the exit, and then do that repeatedly for however many hours my deep-fried brain can handle. So there's one more decision to make. Which level? Well, one that's short for a start. I know there is much failure in my immediate future, and I'd rather if, when it came, it invalidated seconds of my existence rather than minutes or, God forbid, hours. And it would be nice if it was a level balanced around a pistol start, where the lack of guns and ammo that comes with an individual level speedrun won't be too much of an issue. That narrows it down. I'm tempted to go for E1M1, the hangar, the legendary first level of the first episode of the first Doom game. The aforementioned Carl Jobst actually did a video focusing specifically on a UV max run of this level, which lends it a certain appeal, but ultimately makes me decide against it. Again, I'd rather try a level that has less competition on the leaderboards. Not that I care about such things, I'm still telling myself. I finally opt for Entryway, level 1 of Doom 2. It's short, it should be possible to make it through without dying, and the layout is simple enough that it shouldn't be too tough to come up with an optimal route. So at last, it is time to dive in. Go, doddering old man, go! But not very quickly, at least not at first, and let's be honest, probably not at last either. I am very familiar with this level, of course, but I still need to take some time to make sure I remember where all the secrets are and figure out a decent way to get to all the enemies. Plus, I need time to adjust to the slightly different handling in this version of the game compared to what I'm used to with GZ Doom. I might just be imagining it, but the mouse movement seems a little more floaty in this version, and the fact I don't have free look takes some getting used to. Even going relatively slowly and cautiously, it takes me a good few attempts to even make it to the end of the level. And when I do, my time is 1 minute 19.26 seconds. I have no real idea how good that is, but I can make an educated guess that it's terrible. But to be sure, let's have a look at the leaderboards on speedrun.com. Okay, well that time would put me in last place by over 8 seconds, and it puts me a whole 30 seconds, a half a minute off the second last place. As for how far off the world record I am, well that's hardly worth mentioning, is it? But of course I'm not deterred. That was literally my first completed attempt. There is so much room for improvement. So let's start work on finding where that improvement is hiding. The first thing to do is figure out the optimal route. I definitely need to pick up the chainsaw first thing. That much becomes clear after I spent the first couple of minutes slowly, painfully picking off enemies with the pistol. The next question is, when should I clear out this side room? You have to walk by it to get to the rest of the level, so it seems logical that you might as well do it on your way past. But you do have to come back in this general direction to pick up the rocket launcher, so I'll leave it as an open question for now. When to pick up the rocket launcher would also seem to be a crucial question, but it's one I'm too stupid to contemplate, at least to begin with. Somehow it doesn't really occur to me that having it would allow me to shoot 2 rockets, which might come in handy with, killing some enemies. So, given that I've already decided to do the side room first, for quite a few attempts I leave picking up the rocket launcher till last, when everything's already dead. One reason for this poor decision is the fact that I've been operating under a misapprehension. For some reason, for the last several decades, I've thought that the door to the rocket launcher secret was opened when you walked into the exit room. But no, as I discover after nearly half an hour of attempts, the door is triggered by landing on the little raised square when you jump off here. Knowing this makes it seem a little more feasible to pick up the rocket launcher when there's still something alive to kill it with. Now the question becomes what to kill with it. My first instinct is to use it on the horde of imps in the outdoor secret area. Even if you use a shotgun, killing them is time consuming, whereas a couple of rockets can take them out no problem if you get it right. So that's the strategy. Side room first, rocket launcher as soon as possible, blow up the imps outside, just mow down everything else when it gets close. It feels messy and I'm pretty sure it's suboptimal, but I can't come up with anything better at the moment, so I stick with it for a while. And about 50 minutes into my speedrunning journey, I get this run. That sounds better when Carl Jobst says it. Anyway, it's not a good run, even taking into account my lack of experience, but it is nevertheless my best run yet at 58.66 seconds. I've improved my time by 20 seconds. And, well, that's not nothing, but it's also not much, not in context. And it's still 27 seconds off the world record. Now, I didn't expect to be challenging world records, of course, but 27 seconds? That means my time is almost twice the world record time. Even taking into account my many errors and suboptimal play, how can I be losing so much time in such a quick run? Well, the good thing about speedrun.com is it has links to videos of every run listed on its leaderboards. So far I've avoided looking at any of them. I wanted to go into this whole speedrunning thing fresh and have a go at coming up with my own strategies. Not because I think I can do it better, but just for the fun of it, just to experience what the speedrunning pioneers did. But at its core, speedrunning is a community thing, and pretty much every world record run is a collaborative effort, to a greater or lesser extent. So the time has come to head back to speedrun.com and see what the pros are doing that I'm not. And this is where I realised something that you might have already picked up on. I was looking at the wrong leaderboard. This is for Hangar, the first level of the original Doom, not for Entryway, the first level of Doom 2, i.e. the one I've been working on. I feel like an idiot, but this is actually good news. I'm not 27 seconds off the world record, I'm 13 seconds off, which is still not great, but a hell of a lot better than I thought. 13 seconds still seems like an insurmountable barrier, but at least I can conceive of how someone might be that much faster. Incidentally, I should probably acknowledge at this point that there's a grand total of 10 runs on the leaderboard, so as far as world records go, it's not exactly a hotly contested one. Regardless, let's have a look at how this guy did it. Well, I won't show any of his video without permission, but I'll put a link in the description. There are plenty of deviations from my run, of course, but the biggest one concerns the use of the rocket launcher in that side room. He waits until he gets the launcher before he heads to that room and uses one rocket to clear out a few enemies quickly. He uses the other rocket on the outdoor imps and finishes off the rest with the shotgun. The other significant difference is to do with the imps that come out of the secret room in the main area with the door to the exit. I've been killing them as soon as I get to that room, but he ignores them at first, instead chainsawing them to death on the way back from getting the rocket launcher. This allows him to take a much more direct route. Plus, of course, there's the fact he does literally everything else cleaner and quicker. But now I have guidelines. There may very well be some minor improvements to be made to this strategy, but if it's good enough for the world record holder, it's good enough for me. So I start trying to emulate it as closely as possible. Turns out that's easier said than done. It wasn't immediately evident, but this strategy requires a bit of good luck. You need the RNG gods to be on your side. For one thing, you need the enemies in the side room to position themselves just right for you to be able to take out most of them with just one rocket. More significantly, the imps that the record holder ignores at first so he can chainsaw them later rarely behave themselves. They can get in your way when you need to land on the square to open the rocket launcher room, they can shoot fireballs at you and if you're unlucky do enough damage to kill you. And even if they don't do any of these things, unless they line up nicely in front of your chainsaw, you don't really save much time by letting them live a little longer. If they wander off, you can actually lose time chasing them down. So yes, RNG is a factor, but that's not enough to explain why, after 50 more attempts, I haven't managed to improve my time at all, despite trying to emulate the world record. And honestly, I'm still kind of at a loss to explain it. I mean, I suck, of course, that's the obvious explanation, perhaps the only one that's necessary, but still, I didn't think I'd reach my plateau after a mere 50 minutes of attempts. But there it is, I hit my peak after 50 minutes, and well over an hour later I haven't improved. And that starts to get a little demoralising, a little frustrating. I don't mind sucking, but usually I can at least suck slightly less if I put in a concerted effort. And doing this one level over and over and coming up against so much bad RNG, it's getting pretty stale. Maybe it's time to look for a speedrunning category that I find more palatable. So, with my best time still at 58.66 seconds, good enough for only 6th place on the leaderboard, on which I remind you there are a mere 10 entries, I give up on UV Max and go searching for greener pastures. I'll be sticking with Doom, of course, that's a given. But maybe my first instinct to look for something super fast wasn't the best. Doing just one level repeatedly gets boring quickly, and the shorter a run is, the more significant small errors and bad RNG become. With a longer run, there are more areas to improve, and you've got time to make up for even significant mistakes. Well, until you've really learned the run to the best of your abilities, at least. I also come to the conclusion that since enemies are the most random element of the game, maybe a category where you have to actively go looking for every single one of them is always going to be a bit too stressful. After perusing speedrun.com for a little while, I see there's an any percent category for Unity ports of Doom, and that all the top runs have been done on the easiest difficulty setting. Easiest difficulty setting? That's where I'm a Viking. 10 internet points to anyone who gets that reference. As I understand it, any percent basically just means you need to finish as quickly as possible without any other considerations. No need to kill monsters if you can avoid it, no need to hunt down secrets, just hit that exit switch as fast as you can. But this time I want something more than just a single level. I need something a bit more substantial and less repetitive. So how about just doing the first episode of the original Doom? Looking at the leaderboards, it seems like a relatively popular category. There are well over 100 entries. And although I said before I wanted to do a category without too much competition, I can see now the appeal of a well-stocked leaderboard. Sure, the more people there are, the more people who are going to be better than me, but the obverse is also true. There will be more people worse than me. In theory. I hope. Anyway, apart from a couple of extreme outliers, the low end of the leaderboard seems to be around the 10-minute mark. That seems like a decent run to me, something more substantial than the 1-minute run I was doing before, something I can sink my teeth into, but also not something that's going to give me a heart attack if I screw up in the final seconds of a multiple hour run. So let's give it a go. Once again, of course, I'm not even going to pretend to be going quickly to start with. I've got to make my way through 8 levels now, and it's actually been a hell of a long time since I've really played Episode 1 properly. Even back in the day I spent more time on Doom 2 and Final Doom, and when I did play these first levels it was in the PlayStation version, so this stuff is by no means engraved on my memory. So I get lost plenty of times, which I'm going to guess doesn't happen to the guys at the top of the leaderboard. On the plus side, I've pretty much adjusted to the slightly different handling in these Unity versions by now. Anyway, after stumbling my way around for a while, I managed a time of 11 minutes 34 seconds in my first attempt. Given how much time I wasted going in completely the wrong direction, I'm really not too unhappy with this. It's clear that the 10-minute mark will be easily within my grasp, and that's pretty much all I was hoping for. With that benchmark in mind, I set about improving my time. You might notice, by the way, that I've gone to the trouble of setting up a proper timer. This was kinda necessary since the in-game timer only keeps track of your time for each level, not the whole episode. But having this external timer also just makes the whole thing a lot more compelling, as you can keep track of your best times for each level, see where you're falling behind, keep an eye on how you're doing relative to your personal best, and see a tally of how many attempts you've done. Later on you'll see that I also activated the option to keep track of your total playtime and to see your sum of best segments, meaning the overall time I would have achieved if all my best times for each level were combined. It's pretty nifty. Anyway, my second attempt was naturally a lot faster, and I set a personal best time in every single level, plus of course in my overall time. Indeed, I've already demolished my goal of breaking the 10-minute mark, and I'm still getting lost on a regular basis, so there's plenty of time still to be saved once I actually know where I'm going. So much time, in fact, that by my 5th attempt I'm down to 7 minutes 38. I'm also having a lot more fun than I did trying to UV max the first level of Doom 2. There's a lot more focus on movement in this run, and a lot less combat, which means less RNG. And because there's so much more to learn, there's more improvement, and therefore more satisfaction. I'm absolutely sure that there will come a point where I reach a plateau again, and after that maybe frustration will set in once more, but that point seems to be a good distance away. After 5 runs though, I decided it's time to stop relying on my own ingenuity and go watch a pro do it, to see where they cut time and what tricks they use to speed up the process. I want to see the proper strategy earlier this time because there's so much more memorization and muscle memory involved in navigating the levels, I'm wary of getting into bad habits. So I go and have a look at the world record run, which sits at 4 minutes 40, a good 3 minutes better than my current best. Again, I won't show the video, but I'll put a link in the description. I'm actually surprised by how few things he does differently, although there are several things I missed and some of them are really significant. Most significant of all perhaps is this secret in level 6 that I'd completely forgotten about, but which not only skips a huge part of the level, but also gets you a rocket launcher, which I'd really been missing when it came time to kill the Bruiser brothers at the end of the run. The chain gun just wasn't cutting it. Then there's this trick in the same level where you have to lure over a zombie so that a door hits his head and stays open instead of closing. This is a timed door, and if it's allowed to close, you're stuck in this room for long enough that the relatively lengthy process of luring him over is well worth it. And there's this secret in level 7 which provides a much more straightforward route through much of the map, saving quite a few seconds. These tricks are huge time savers and they're also easy to execute. But then there are a couple of tricks that require some degree of skill. And you know my relationship with skill, we're not really on speaking terms. There's this one right at the end of the run where you just jump straight to the exit instead of having to hit the switch and wait for the stairs to rise. It's not actually that tough, but you do need to get the timing right with the lowering wall and the angle needs to be good. Somewhat more difficult is this jump in level 4, where if you strafe run at just the right angle, you can get across this gap without needing to activate the bridge. Now, I mentioned strafe running there. I'm no expert on the intricacies of Doom speedrunning, but in basic terms you can move faster in Doom if you strafe to one side while also running forward. Meaning you're essentially running at a 45-degree angle to where you're facing. And for some reason this is significantly faster. There's also a more advanced form of strafe running where you can move even faster by, I don't know, I've never really understood the details, but it involves pressing more buttons and being locked into the angle you're moving. And that's the sort of strafe running you need to use to get over this gap. But, fortunately for me, the Unity ports of Doom don't require those extra techniques, which really is handy, because I don't know what they are and I suspect I'd never be able to execute them. Anyway, speaking of strafe running, after watching the video of the world record, I've really become aware that I'm not using it anywhere near enough. I've always known that strafe running was faster, but it's just not become a habit. Which really isn't good enough. The extra tricks I've learned are good, but I'm also definitely going to have to learn how to play this game while running at a 45-degree angle to where I'm pointing. Well, with these new tricks in mind, I make another attempt, and naturally I completely fail to improve my time. This should be impossible, given just how significant the stuff I've just learned is, but somehow I manage it just by messing up at every opportunity. Oh well, that's speedrunning. I'm sure the next attempt will be better. It's not. I get to the blue door in the 3rd level and realise that I somehow failed to pick up the blue key, which is now right over on the other side of the map. This is the first time I've actually reset a run without finishing it. It won't be the last. Eventually my time does start falling. On my 9th attempt I break the 7-minute barrier with a 6:58. My 12th attempt is a 6:41. My 19th is a 6:36. My 31st is a 6:33. My personal bests are coming further apart, and when I do beat them, I'm beating them by less. That plateau might be approaching. And yet, even now, after 31 attempts and getting on for 3 hours of playtime, I'm still having a lot more fun than I did with the UV max attempts, and every small improvement is providing a good deal of satisfaction, even if it only means I've gone from 70th on the leaderboard to 68th. Because, yes, I have to admit that, despite what I told myself, I do care about how my time compares to others. I still have no illusions about challenging for the world record, but I'm finding that trying to get closer to it does mean a lot, even if I'm nowhere close at all. I know this is foolish, and I know that soon I'm going to have to reconcile myself with the fact that the only person I'm really challenging is myself. I have to hope that will be enough. My 37th attempt is a 6:25, and I'm thinking this might be the end of my day of pretending to be a speedrunner. I'm not unhappy with that time, and more to the point, I'm kind of proud at how much I've managed to improve, even if there's still a hell of a lot more room for improvement. 1 minute 45 seconds of it at least. But perfection was never the goal, so maybe this is enough. However, one thing still irks me. Remember those 2 tricks I mentioned before? The ones that require a modicum of skill? The one where you can strafe run over the gap in level 4, and the one where you can jump straight to the exit at the very end of the run? The thing is, I still haven't managed to put together a run where I successfully pulled off both of those tricks. The one in level 4 requires a high degree of precision, and the one right at the end, although technically easier, is more stressful because you only get one attempt and because, well, it's right at the end. But I really want to put together just one run where I get both of them right the first time. And so I do something I thought I'd never bother with. I practice. Using quick saves and quick loads, I spend a while just trying these 2 jumps over and over. I get to a point where I can pull off the final jump pretty reliably, but the level 4 jump frustrates the hell out of me. Sometimes I get it 4 or 5 times in a row, sometimes it takes me 10 attempts to get it. That equates to a lot of wasted time in a proper run. But eventually I figure out a way to do it reliably, what I believe is called a setup in speedrunning parlance. If you back yourself into this corner, make sure your crosshairs are precisely on the opposite corner, then move a few steps forward and start strafe running, you'll be at the angle you need when you hit the gap. It's slow, it takes a couple of valuable seconds, which is long enough to exclude it from any serious run, but for me it's well worth it. And the practice turns out to be worth it too, because quite soon, on my 40th attempt, I achieved my goal. I finally get both of these tricks down in the same run. It's only a 4.5-second improvement over my previous best, largely thanks to this big pink bastard, but hey, at this point that's a significant time save. And that's the end of my day of pretending to be a speedrunner. Did I enjoy it? Yes, very much so, especially once I found a category I really liked. Will I keep doing it? Well, maybe, to some extent. In fact, in the last few days I've done a few more runs and cut another 22 seconds off my best time. I'd now be at 48th on the speedrun.com leaderboard if I felt it was worthwhile submitting my run. And that puts me in the top half of a relatively well-contested leaderboard. It's not much of an achievement, but it's also not nothing. It might seem odd, but I found this type of speedrunning to be quite relaxing, especially compared to playing Doom normally. I've mentioned in previous videos that even now, 30 years after the game first came out, I still find Doom to be one of the most stressful and scariest games around. It's dark, it's foreboding, and the gameplay lends itself extremely well to jump scares. But there are no jump scares in speedrunning. Well, not really. There are scary jumps, like that one right at the end of the run I was doing, but no real jump scares. You already know where everything is, you know what to expect, you know pretty much what's going to happen, and if things happen differently, that can be a bit frustrating, but all you need to do is calm your mind and get back into the rhythm of things. It really is rather zen-like once you get the hang of it. So yes, I enjoyed speedrunning and I'd recommend everyone give it a go. Just remember to set your expectations to an appropriate level, and keep in mind that the pros going for the world records need to have superhuman levels of skill and dedication. But just doing it for fun and personal satisfaction, that doesn't require much at all. Oh, incidentally, if you happen to be one of the very few people watching this video almost immediately after I publish it, I'll be streaming a few more attempts on my backup YouTube channel. Links in the description. Well, until next time, get off my lawn.